Hi, Dale coming to you from my temporary garage again, and my wife on Instagram at AMB Art Studios, she's pretty darn good and loves to do these sketches and watercolors of flowers. She's really into botanical art. You should check her out on Instagram again at AMB Art Studios. While she's drawing these and painting these, she likes to display them, hang them up, rather than just keep stacking them until she gives them away. So I'm going to build her a couple of these hanging card holders. These are the type where you clip with a clothespin your cards or pictures or whatever on here. This goes at Michael's for anywhere between like $40 to $60, completely done with scrap wood that I have around the shop. I made 2 of them. This is a great beginner project. You can do it with inexpensive wood and not a lot of tools. Because you're painting it, it becomes very forgiving. I hope you stick around. I'll show you how I made both of them. Come on, let's go.
I start by milling down a piece of scrap 1/2-inch birch plywood into 8 1.5-inch strips. You need 4 per card holder, and since I'm making 2, I sat down with pencil and paper, dug out my old college calculus books, and figured out that I'll need 8 strips if I'm going to make 2 of these. Next, I find a few pieces of 1x4 pine, which is actually 3.5 by 3/4 inches, and I cross-cut those to roughly the same length as my 1/2-inch plywood strips, which is about 26 inches. If you don't have a cross-cut sled, I highly recommend you watch my video and build one. They're easy to make. Otherwise, you can use miter saw, circular saw, handsaw, or a lightsaber. Now I take those pieces of pine and I rip them down to 1-inch pieces. Unfortunately, I lost my notes from earlier, so I had to go back inside and do all my calculations again to figure out that since I needed 4 per card holder, I'll need 8 for 2. Took me an hour. One side each of the plywood strips will be visible, and even though I'm going to be painting them, I decided to place some glue-on edge banding on the side that will be showing. My opinion is that it will paint better than the side of plywood, which could have voids. A couple of problems though. I didn't have enough birch banding, so I had to use a bit of red oak banding on a couple. Not really an issue since I'm painting them. My edge banding is for 3/4-inch wood and my plywood is only 1/2 inch. Again, not really an issue, just means I'll have a lot more to trim off. I iron on the edge banding, then using a couple specialty tools, I trim them up. These specialty tools are very inexpensive and give a very nice flush cut to the banding. You don't need these at all. I've put on many yards of edge banding before I had these, and I just used a razor blade to trim them up. I give everything a good sanding now, as it'll be a bit more difficult to sand in the corners later. And yes, these sanding clips were played back at actual speed. This next part is hotly debated and often ends in fist fights. I think it's easier to glue the pieces of the frame profile together first, then cut the miters. Others, the wrong side, think it is easier to cut and assemble each piece of the profile separately. Well, this is my video. I'm in my garage by myself, so I win the debate. I'm gluing the pine pieces to the plywood first. I do 2 at a time so I don't have to use as many clamps. I have another sled video where I show you how I make this miter sled. Fear not if you don't have one. You can use your miter saw or even careful cuts with a handsaw. Since we're painting these, your miters do not need to be perfect, as wood putty can become your best friend. I start by simply cutting a 45 on one side of each piece. After that is done, I measure out a stop block so that I can make repeatable cuts at the same length. Gluing up the frames, I'm using Titebond's Quick and Thick glue. I really like this glue as it doesn't drip all over the place. It sets up quick, so you need to make sure you use this for more simple glue ups. For clamping, I have a couple of these band clamps with corner brackets. I've used these many times and they work great. Until now. I'm not sure what was going on with these at all, but as soon as any tension was put on them, the ratcheting mechanism stopped working and all tension was removed. This made the stress level go up, as this is quick and thick glue. Note the quick portion of that name. I didn't have a lot of time to come up with a solution, so what I decided to do was tighten the band clamp, but before I let go, which would release all the tension, I used quick clamps to clamp down the band to the frame. This worked well, as luckily you don't have to give a lot of pressure and tension to these. This happened on both band clamps, so I guess I'm going to be getting new ones. To give more strength to the mitered corners, I'm gluing on a triangle cutoff. This will span both sides of the miter joint, so it should add a lot of strength. I brushed on a coat of primer and let that dry. Now I'm spraying on a coat of flat white. The goal here is to have the artwork that will be hanging on the frame get the attention, not the frame. We bought these decorative thumbtacks and I'll be spacing them out loosely on both sides. I come down about 4 inches from the top, then 6 inches between the tacks. Just get them close and it'll be okay. Now simply grab some twine and tie basic loops on each end of the hook and loop them around the thumbtacks. You don't want to make them super tight, so make sure you leave a decent amount of slack. To hang these on the wall, I'm choosing to just use the same twine. I tie loops around each end, as I'm going to be stapling these to the back of the frame, and the knots will give something for the staples to hold on to. I was going to simply use my manual stapler, but wouldn't you know it? No staples. So I moved to my fancy powered stapler.
So here it is. I think it came out great. I got a matching one and I'll be putting both on the wall here in a few minutes. And you can see by watching the video that even though this is a basic and easy project, mistakes can be made. So measure twice, cut once. Remember, check out my wife on Instagram at AMB Art Studios. I'll leave a link down below in the description. And until next time, see ya.